Hello everyone, my name is Robert Motley. I am an assistant professor at Boston College School of Social Work. I'm also the founder of the Racism-Based Violence, Injury, and Prevention Lab. And I'm excited today because I will be interviewing three gentlemen, two from Chicago, Carl Williams and Anthony Jones, and one from the University of Buffalo School of Social Work, Dr. Christopher St. Ville. All three individuals are here today for our three-day event, and so we're going to get a chance to talk with these three individuals to learn a little bit about their story, their experiences, and what really has the work that they're doing and the impact that they want to see from their work. So get ready for some good conversation. Welcome, Dr. St. Ville.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So as we started, what I really want to do is, could you tell the audience a little bit about, the work that you're doing over at the University of Buffalo?
Yes. So I'm basically my work revolves around violence prevention. My work focuses around black masculinity per se. So I focus on the issue of victimization for black men. And then basically that's how I basically kind of found myself in this work. I was able to have an opportunity to work on to basically start a hospital-based violence intervention program with my mentor in Maryland, and so basically that's why I started with that work. So all of my work focuses around black masculinity from a social work perspective. How do I help achieve better outcomes for black males? And then the violence prevention is just one of the lanes that I'm in. So that's the work that I'm doing currently, focusing on victimization. And so basically through that, I do a couple of things. I evaluate hospital-based violence intervention programs. I'm an evaluator by training. And I also work with street-based frontline workers to try to help improve the way that they work in the community with the folks that they're working with. And so, yeah, that's where my work is at.
Okay. And tell me a little bit about what you growing up, where you reside from, where you grew up at.
I'm from New York. I'm from Long Island. New York, a suburb of New York City. I grew up in a small town called Central Islip, Long Island. I had some challenges. I had some challenges growing up. Just being a young black man in my community. Just getting in some trouble and having some negative outcomes led me to being incarcerated. I've been in group homes and stuff like that. That's pretty much my childhood. And then, so basically I have a street background, group home kid, juvenile delinquency, not really spending a lot of time in the home, a lot of family problems, being kicked out the house, and then, when I went to college straight from a group home, and then
you went to college right from a group home?
Straight from a group home, yeah. I was locked up, and then I got released. I was locked up in I was in juvie in the detention center in Albany, New York, and then when it's time for me to get released, my parents didn't want me back home anymore because they didn't want me back in the same neighborhood. So I had to be released to a group home. And so I had got my GED while I was upstate, but then when I got to the group home, they said I had to go back to regular school anyway because they wasn't hearing me not go to school. So I went to the group home, and I got my high school diploma, and then from there, so I got my high school diploma. I was done with the group home. I was getting ready to go back home, but then the group home ladies wanted me to apply for college because they thought I was smart. Everybody knew what's gonna happen if I go back home.
Right.
And then they basically sent me on the bus to college, and that's where I went to undergrad. And then I did 4 years and went to grad school, and then eventually somebody thought that I was smart enough to go get my PhD, and then that's how I went. And so,
wow.
So because of my background, my interest in research was always around how do I develop interventions for black men, and what would those interventions look like if they were developed for me, and that's how I think about my work.
Okay. And in that process, was there any prominent figures? Because it seemed like that's an interesting story, given the things that you was going through. But what were some of those key figures or key individuals who played a role in you saying, you know what, I really, because it's one thing for older individuals to tell you, go back to school, get your education and things like that. But what was that most important figure that when they told you to do this, that it really meant something to you, and you went on ahead and pursued it?
Well, the fact the ladies in the group home that ran the group home, there were two black women. They really kind of, they really made the point of really they weren't trying to take no from me, you know what I mean? And they basically said like, yo, Chris, if you go back home, you're gonna die or go to jail. You might as well try the school thing. We know you don't like it, but we can see you doing it. So they were the first ones that got me to school.
So they weren't taking no for an answer.
They wasn't taking no for an answer. They saw the potential and they thought that I needed to take that opportunity. Before I went, while I was at the group home, a graduate chapter of the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, the Eta Theta Lambda chapter, they took an interest in me, and I was a part of their mentoring program while I was in the group home. When I left the group home and went up to college, then I had a couple of people in my life. One mainly Dr. Ron Stewart, who was a black male PhD from Alabama at the time. He was teaching at my undergraduate institution, and Dr. Anthony Neal, both of them black men. They kind of took me under the wing and basically helped me get through undergrad. And then I had a counselor named Dr. Bergovitz who helped me out. And then when I got to the PhD, there was Dr. Trisha Van Goodley, who's today still my mentor, Dr. Von Nevitt, Dr. Lawrence Gary. So there was there's a lot of people that basically helped me on this ride and who are continuing to assist me, on this trajectory that I'm on.
Okay. Now, looking at the work that you've done thus far, where do you see yourself? What's your goal in the work that you're doing? What would you see like to come to fruition, given all the work that you're doing?
Well, right now, what I'm looking for out of my work is to help demonstrate the effectiveness of hospital-based violence intervention programs as well as community violence intervention programs. Demonstrate their efficacy through evaluation, through research, improve the way that they operate, and if at some point we're able to make these programs institutionalized and be funded well enough and to allow credible messengers, which are in frontline workers, to have trajectories toward employment, that's what my goal is, to try to help those programs be sustained and to demonstrate whether or not they're effective.
Okay. All right. Well, again, I want to thank you again for participating in our event, and I just really want you to share with the audience a little bit about your background, and how did you get started in the work and some of the things that motivated you to get involved with this work. Appreciate it, and looking forward to the wonderful things that I know you're going to be doing in the future.
Man, thank you for the opportunity. Go Bulls, baby.
My name is Carl Williams. I work with the Chicago Torture Justice Center. Some of the things that we do and that I do at the Chicago Torture Justice Center is work with those who are formerly incarcerated and incarcerated men, as well as their families, connecting them to resources, whether it's education, whether it's mental health, whether it's housing or entrepreneurship, which means supporting them when it comes to building out their business, when it comes to building out their ideas, and allowing for opportunities to create generational wealth, not just among themselves, but their families as well as their communities. So a lot of those men, I also push higher education inside a prison institution to allow them the opportunity to be educated and stress the importance of education and how it allows you to be able to advance as well as be a pillar in the community as well.
I love the fact, you're from my stomping grounds, from Chicago. So tell us a little bit about your upbringing, man. What side of Chicago did you grow up in? What was kind of the environment that you grew up in? And really, if you want to share, what was some of the bad things that you may experience, but what's some of the good things that came out of your experiences growing up in Chicago?
Absolutely. Well, I grew up on the south side of Chicago, what they would call the low end.
Okay.
I grew up being a person who I come from a strong family when it comes to my mom and my father, but I was a person who took different paths when it comes to street hustling. So I involved myself in street hustling. Not only that, being a person who grew up in that community, being a fighter, being a person who also engaged in other negativity as well. So I think that and growing up in that environment, a lot of older people who were a part of my life, who knew me, would always try to talk to me about making better choices, doing different things in the community, being an example in the community, and they would speak to me about how I had access to a lot of the other young youth that was in the community, and they used to say, what type of leader are you in terms of how you guide your friends, of those who look up to you and those who following you? And I felt no responsibility to lead anybody because I couldn't even quite possibly really lead myself at that time. I thought that the direction that I was going in was one that was of substance, but as I began to, I feel like have a more of an attentive ear and listening to them, there was an awakening that had started for me at the age of 17. So it began to have a struggle to where the things that I was doing in the community versus what I should be doing in the community. So those of those friends who was following me, or who I would say were supporters of me, felt like I was losing my mind, when in reality I actually was. I was losing a negative mind, transitioning over back to my right mind. So and growing up in that community, though, for me, it was always I felt like it was a good space and a bad space, meaning that there was influences of different chaos, that it was easily to follow that brick road, and then there was influences of positivity that was a struggle to follow that brick road, because the people who was the negative influence had the most power and was the most celebrated.
But tell me, what was kind of like the defining moment for you that kind of really put you on the path to do the work that you're doing right now?
So, being a person who's a torture survivor, I went to prison.
When you say torture survivor, what do you mean by torture?
So, what I mean by that is that in Black and brown communities, there's a lot of violence at the hands of police officers.
Okay.
So, I was a person who survived violence by the hands of police officers, and those officers not only tortured me, but other young Black men, other brown men, other young Black women, other women in our communities. And because of that, wrongful conviction has happened. And in that process, I was a person who was wrongfully convicted, put into prison for a crime I didn't commit, with so many others just like me as well. And going through that experience, when I first went through the prison institution, there was no opportunity in terms of higher education for me during that period. They were removing all of the higher education from the prison.
Right.
So I would read any book that I can, whether it was a news magazine, whatever it was, I found some way of education in almost everything that I read, whether it was current events or what was happening in the community when it came to entertainment. But along that journey and that path, I would run into older men in those prison institutions who knew me coming up, and knew that there was that a transition had happened when I was on the street, and now one was happening while I'm in prison. So they would always have or want to create this space to want to talk to me. But at the time, when you're young, you're a knucklehead. Your ear is not.
You hear, but you ain't listening.
Absolutely, you don't have a keen ear. As I went on to go to the penitentiary, I was in Pontiac and then went to Stateville Prison, and there was no opportunity for education.
Okay.
And for me, that bothered me, and that became my focus. Writing grievances, complaining about education, not just because I wanted to be education. I was just making a complaint that why doesn't it exist?
Right.
And then I was allowed to be able to get into the education curriculum, and then they said, well, hey, because you're a long-term sentence and you have natural life plus 60 years, we just put you on the list. All of those who have less time than you will go before you. So that means that for years, I was just on the list, never advancing in terms of the opportunity for education.
Your grievances, though, did set it up to where they did now start allowing folks to be a part of the educational process, but those who had less time than you were able to go up first.
Correct.
So what you did benefited a lot of brothers who was in those situations. I just wanted to make note of that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And as we move forward, there was an opportunity with this organization named PNAP. So it was called Prison Neighborhood Arts Project. They would come in to educate you on a college level, but yet there was no college credits. There was you couldn't get a degree, but you can go through all of the courses and actually complete the schooling, but they couldn't offer you a degree. So or no college credits. We complained and wrote grievances about that, myself and so many others. And then DePaul University said, well, we'll offer college credits. I went to DePaul, started to get college credits. We also, in Stateville, we started a debate team. So when we would do all of these things and start all of these different curriculums, it was, the administration would try to prevent us every step along the way.
And how long did you end up? Because you said that you was tortured by the police,
Yes.
to falsely accused and convicted of a crime. What was that process in terms of you? How long did you have to stay, and then till you actually was able to? Now, were you vindicated?
So I'm in the process of actually being vindicated now in terms of a certificate of innocence. You can't be vindicated unless you have that certificate of innocence.
Okay.
Which is absurd, but yeah.
Okay. And so how long, what's that process? When did you start that process?
I've started that process, well, I started the process a little bit before I was released. And because they released me and the courts demanded that they release me, the process was kind of stalled, if you will. But now it's back before not only the courts, but it's back before the administrative in Chicago, and hopefully they're equipped to be able to do the right thing, and that's what I'm banking on, that there would be some justice when it comes to the energy of those who are the powers that be to correct what has happened when it comes to injustice against myself and so many others.
As we close, tell me a little bit about what's the goal for the work. You told us about all the work that you're doing. What would be one of the biggest things you would like to come out of the work that you're doing?
So as of now, there are brothers who are allowed to be able to get degrees and doctorates and master degrees inside of the institution, and the goal is to have those brothers who have obtained those master degrees and bachelor's and associate degrees to be able to work in the community doing this work. Not to just see them in the community working for an organization, but to work for universities, to work in prominent places in terms of the universities as professors, as your educators, but also be a part of those that also runs and owns the Fortune 500 companies, to see those businesses grow, to create generational wealth, not for just this day, but tomorrow and the future as well, for not just them, but their kids, as well as our communities.
All right. Well, again, much respect to you, brother.
I
And I'm
appreciate
looking
it.
forward to seeing the great work that you'll be doing. So, again, thank you all for tuning in, and we out.
Absolutely, I appreciate it.
All right.
Yeah, my name is Anthony Jones. I go by Naviel Ben Rakim Yahoo. And my Hebrew is like my faith. The work that I'm doing now, I work for a nonprofit in Chicago that deals with system impacted people, trying to get them released from prison.
Okay. And what tell me about what was something that incident or an individual in your life that kind of put you on the path that you are on right now? What was that event?
That event, it's actually, I would actually say that was a series of events that put me on the path that I am now. One, which is one of the most traumatizing ones, was me being sentenced to natural life plus 30 years in prison at the age of 20. And
How old were you at the time?
at the time, I was just turning 20.
Okay.
So yeah, just turning 20 years old. Not much of a police record, not even much of that. So that's why, they thought it was, kind to give me natural life, and then adding 30 years to that, without the possibility of parole. So I was supposed to die in prison.
Okay. And was that, and I'm just asking you, was you convicted of something that you actually done, or was this falsely convicted, or was you tortured into a confession? Because I know a lot of that goes on, has happened to a lot of brothers and sisters in Chicago. So was that the case for you? Or
Actually, somewhat all of what you just said actually was a part of my case. One, I was guilty but not guilty as charged. I was tortured at Area 5 Police Station. Detective Ronaldo Guevara and Ernest Harvison. I was a victim there at their Area 5 Police Station. I was beat into making a statement. And like I said, I was guilty, but not guilty as charged. So, you know, the way that looks is that, you know, I was guilty of some of the offense, but not to the extent where they actually put me in, that they gave me all that time for. Like I was sentenced all the time.
So they added on some other charges that shouldn't have been charged to you.
Yeah,
for doing
a lot of
that.
people say they overcharge you.
Okay.
You know, not to go into the particulars of my case, but one of the things, it was I had an altercation with an individual, and it turned into a physical altercation. And by the time I, you know, got into the police station, and they were trying to make me say certain things, or trying to enhance it to make it worse than it possibly was, if that could be done, they actually sentenced me saying that I was charged with a first-degree heinous murder with an attempt armed robbery, which it was not a heinous murder, and it was not an attempt armed robbery or robbery of any kind.
Okay.
So those were the circumstances that made it enhanced for me to possibly get the death penalty or life in prison, which is I did 30 years of that before I was able to be released through a clemency petition, which I filed pro se myself, and you know, became a paralegal while I was incarcerated, and worked in the library, advocating for a lot of men that I was inside with, and helping them with their cases, and ultimately was able to you know, do my own case, and got out by clemency by Governor J.B. Pritzker in 2021.
Okay. And so you say you did a little over 30 years?
30 years. I went in at the age of, actually a little under 30, but by some months. I went in at the age of 20, and just shy of my 19th birthday, and got out at right before my 50th birthday.
Okay. And I guess during that time, was you trying to further your education or anything? Was you able to take advantage of any type of programs, you know, that could benefit you? Because I feel that in your mind, you knew there was going to be a day where you were going to be able to beat this and get out. And so was there anything that you were trying to focus on while you was there to be able to, you know, increase your education or get other skills and things like that?
Well, actually, it's different because at times I felt I wasn't getting out. At times I lost hope, I lost faith, and I began to basically just say that I'm going to make the best of my life while I'm in prison. I couldn't imagine myself trying to start my life with the possibility of getting out.
Okay.
So I had to begin to, you know, think as far as this is my life, and this is my environment, this is my community, and I have to do the best that I can while I'm here. So I began to try to pursue an education, which was difficult because if you have a life sentence in prison, and there's so many people in prison, usually the people with the shortest amount of time are going into programs, are going into college, are going into GED programs. So, you know, when I went in, I had no GED, I had no colleges, I had no college degree or anything. And going through that whole process, eventually, you know, I had people that actually, you know, that took interest in me, and they began to put me in programs. But at first it was so demoralizing going over the programs, because I was actually the one that was to be sitting in the program to be the one that be the cautionary tale, if you will, for people. So I would sit in a class with people that are actually going home soon, and one of the counselors would look at me and be like, "Well, Jones, how much time do you have?" And like, natural life plus 30 years. So he said, "You're never going home, right?" And I look at him, you know, wonder why would he say this the first time. And he said, and I'm like, "No, I don't have an out date." He said, "Well, you don't want to be like Jones. Jones is never going home. So you need to get, you know."
This is what he's telling the other.
This is what he was telling the young men that were in there that had out dates. So basically, I was there in that class just to be an example of what not to do, a cautionary tale for others. And
wow.
That's the position I had to play in that class until, you know, after doing this for so long, they began to put me in classes, and then I was able to get my associate's degree.
Okay.
So, you know, I was my GED, my associate's degree, and get through other programs. Became a peer health educator, became a peer mentor, taught classes, taught programs in the facilities.
Okay.
So I became, you know, paralegal there. So the work that I'm doing now is really an extension to the work that I was doing inside for system impacted people.
Okay. Well, my last question for you, given the work, and I appreciate you sharing your story with the viewers. What given all the work that you're doing, what do you see? What would be one key goal that you would like to see come into fruition as a result of the work that you are doing?
Actually, the key, what I would love to see, which I pray that I'm wrong. I pray that I will see this one day. The end of mass incarceration. I pray to see that. I pray to see the end of the trauma that men and women suffer while they're in prison, and prior to prison, the trauma that they face prior to that.